Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 2 of our Winging It F1 podcast season review extravaganza. This is the after Christmas episode, so we hope you had a brilliant Christmas. We certainly did, didn't we, guys?
Yeah, although I lost my presenting gig, which is quite annoying. But yeah, I don't know. Someone's outed me. But no, it was a great Christmas. Lots of good presents. Nice watching the Top Gear specials again.
Adam had a great time. Nigel, did you have a lovely time with your massive turkey?
Oh yeah, they're great. Well, we're all wearing the same outfits as well as we did the other day. It's really weird.
Continuity.
Oh yeah, we don't want to make them think that time has passed between at least a week since we recorded this.
Lewis Hamilton has won the sports personality of the year.
Oh yay! Hooray! Well done.
Yes,
well done.
Well, editors appropriate. Well done, Lewis, Holly,
Well done.
Stuart, Tyson, Jordan, Ronnie. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, very worthy winner. She was.
I enjoyed Sue Barker's cameo.
I enjoyed the cameo of Ali McCoy running on naked as a turkey.
Hey, that caused a stir, didn't it? We're joined once again by Ed, Spencer and Ellie Jane to wrap up some major talking points from what has been, if you didn't see our previous podcast, a pretty good season in F1, which is what we decided. We're going to be going straight back into where we left off, which was talking about some brilliant drivers in Formula One this year. We had a long chat about Lewis Hamilton and his greatness in the previous episode, which if you haven't watched, you're stupid. So we're going to go straight into the drivers we think are probably some of the better drivers of the season. I think we can safely say Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc would come in clutch behind Lewis Hamilton in the top 3 drivers of the year. Does anyone else have any quarrels with that before we start talking about them?
You could put Verstappen first.
No, I'd put Lewis first. Gasly, Pierre.
Wouldn't say top 3.
Gasly, the same person.
Perez. Yeah.
We're going to be talking about them all anyway, so let's just go straight into it.
I think for me, if there's a clear top 2 of Lewis and Max.
If we try to make a list, we'll be here all night, and it's not even evening yet. So,
half one.
It's
evening in Australia. It's evening in Australia.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, so let's get a drink.
Me and Nigel have slightly scuppered it by having direct daylight on our videos.
I'll shut my curtains just in case, but no. The whimsical Christmas attitude is still here. And we're going to talk about Max Verstappen first, the winner of the most latest Grand Prix, 2 Grand Prix wins in 2020, I think something like 11 or 12 podiums in a 17 race season. It's very good. A lot of second places. Very good. Ed, do you want to give us some of your hot takes on Max Verstappen's year?
I think he got really unlucky. The fact he had a really undrivable car, but he drove the socks off that. The wins in the second Silverstone race, the win in Abu Dhabi, the way he kept up with Lewis throughout. Max is one of the drivers of the season, but he did make some quite unusual mistakes for him, especially in Hungary, where he nearly took himself out of the race before it even began. He had a bit of a David Coulthard moment.
And they followed it up with a brilliant performance to finish.
Yeah, he did.
Mega start.
Mega race. Magello wasn't so good, mind you. His engine was screwed before it even began. I think Max is one of the better drivers this year. I think we know Max is good. We know Max is talented. We know Max can do it on the day. But could Max do it in a really inadequate car? We found out he can. And he can do it very well when he got everything right for him. Everything pings for him.
Ellie, you look like you want to chime in on that.
Yes.
The car's not as bad as you make it out to be, I don't think.
I agree.
It's okay.
It's not anymore, I'd say.
It's
literally towards the end,
car.
there's a difference. I think it's second best still, even to the
Third,
W, even to the RP whatever or the W10. Like, I still think it's probably the second best car, but there is 2 different cars in each side of the Red Bull garage. I'm not going to speak about that.
I'm not having
2 different
this.
cars. No, you what, right? I'm promising you next season, Perez is going to prove there's 2 different cars. I'm telling you.
Perez will prove how bad Albon and Gasly were.
And 1,000,001 Sergio Perez fans have just had heart attacks.
I mean, I think you're slightly overestimating our viewing and listening figures. To be honest.
Please get a million Mexicans to listen.
I'd agree. We kind of had the debate in one of our first podcasts about from Austria or Styria about which is the second best car. I thought, to be honest, that had been put to bed. I think the Red Bull was clearly the second fastest, and then it was then the kind of Formula 1.5 behind that between Racing Point, Renault, and McLaren. Because let's not forget, Racing Point didn't. They weren't clear behind Red Bull even. They didn't finish third in the constructors. Even
Probably could have. Well, should have.
They should have, definitely.
Yeah, but
15 points, didn't
they weren't the fastest out
they-
of those three on kind of every weekend or most
No.
weekends. It seemed to be pretty even split. Renault had a good charge kind of 2/3 of the way through the season. McLaren looked good at the start and then came on strong again at the end, and Racing Point kind of seemed to get better throughout the season. So, and that was also helped by getting a big haul through Perez's win, although I guess he did retire from Bahrain, so it probably evens out. But yeah, I think Red Bull were kind of head and shoulders above, or maybe a head above that battle, and kind of head and shoulders behind the Mercedes, really. But having said that, Max Verstappen did a really good job, because for him anyway, there wasn't any debate as to who, whether he was faster than the Racing Point drivers or the Renault drivers. It was just completely, he was one of the top two drivers. I'd say second. I think, Nigel, you said perhaps first, but there's no debate as to anyone being able to challenge him in that position, because he really solidified the season for Red Bull and showed again that he's improved year on year on year, and that's a brilliant trait.
He fought for pole at every race pretty much from Nürburgring onwards, so he was within a few tenths of the Mercedes which I think is very easy to forget, considering the Mercedes is just a little bit faster. They can cruise a bit more in the race, but Verstappen was the pusher for Mercedes to have to perform, and it came to a head where he did get pole and did win the race and led every lap in Abu Dhabi, and that was normally a race. I said this on our Abu Dhabi podcast. Normally, a race with Max Verstappen winning is an exciting race, and it's like, oh my god, Max Verstappen's won. It was a really boring race, and we all know that. And I think that shows really where Verstappen and Red Bull have finished the season. It's brilliant. It doesn't mean they're going to start next season in that way, and I think it probably means they're definitely not going to start next season well, like the way Red Bull is. But they've ended the season as nearly as good as the Mercedes. They were 10th away at the Sakir Grand Prix track, which is a straight line speed outer layout. The straight line speed is so dominant there that they were still within a tenth from pole in the hands of Verstappen. So there's a lot going on there, and I think it definitely started out as a really awful car. As Ed said, watching it at Hungary was atrocious. It was worse than the Ferrari the week before.
That's a bit harsh. That's a bit harsh.
To handle,
10 times worse.
To handle it, I think it looked on board terrible to drive. And we don't need to.
It did look at first. It definitely looked awful.
They both looked awful.
Both drivers were spinning all the time. Like it was a terrible car at first. And
this was a hangover from testing.
I don't
Red Bull
know how
would
they got
spun
it so
a lot
wrong
in testing,
well,
but
at first.
Red Bull have solidified that, and they've developed that car nicely to make it in a really good position for Max Verstappen at the end of the season. And I think, he's done a very good job this year. 2 wins in this year for Verstappen, particularly the 70th anniversary Grand Prix win, where he really hustled that car and really looked after those tyres in the blistering heat. Blistering definitely being the word. So he's had some very, very top tier drives, has Max Verstappen. Another driver who has had an excellent season is Charles Leclerc. He has put Sebastian Vettel to shame with I think he outqualified him something like 13 times, and I think Vettel's last Q3 appearance was August or something, and Charles's was last week. So that says a lot about Charles Leclerc fighting for 4th in the championship all through the year. Nigel, do you have any points to make about the young Monegasque driver who you said earlier might be a bit of a Jean Alesi?
Did I?
It might have been Ed.
Yeah.
It was you.
Was it me?
Yeah.
Oh, well. I don't think that. I'll change my mind if I didn't say that. Yeah,
That was quick.
I think he's probably the best qualifier on the grid. I think I said that after Portugal when he qualified in the top 5 or top 6, and he's just outstanding over one lap. I think his lap at Sakir on the shorter layout was probably the qualifying lap of the year. Him and Lance Stroll's pole position lap at Turkey. I think those were the 2 laps of the season. It was just remarkable, and he's managed to put the Ferrari in places it shouldn't be, just like Fernando Alonso used to do at his prime in 2012, 2011, those kind of years. And he's grown so much. All the kind of weaknesses, I guess, of last year, where people said Vettel was able to keep up with him on race pace and stuff, he's put that to bed, and he's grown so much this year. And he's probably the third best driver, just behind Verstappen and Hamilton for me this year.
I think I'd agree with that. I think this was a better season than last season, which
Oh, yeah.
says a lot considering he went in his second season in F1 first in Ferrari and won races and got poles and dominated or outperformed a 4-time world champion. Yeah, he's added consistency to his racing, and for me he's definitely the third best driver of the year. It's exciting in a way to see what he'll be able to do when Ferrari do get their act together, because I think, like Verstappen, he's improved again this year. He's took out a lot of weaknesses from what he had last season, and I think his best season in F1, and definitely a brilliant season.
I think I agree. Like, it's the way he's performed. Like, the minute he got the first podium in Austria was a bit of a shock. Like, we were all like, oh, Charles has somehow still managed to find his way onto the podium, despite, even though we all know from race 1 that Ferrari was a shocking car. The car's definitely more suited to him than probably the Ferrari previous was, just because he wasn't in the car in 2018. So the car was definitely going to be favourable to Vettel, and he still did a good job within that car. And I think he's done a fantastic job in this car with how bad it is, because it is an awful car. There is no denying that. It's probably one of the worst I've seen Ferrari develop in a long time. And, to have performed so well and done such a good job, you definitely have to put him in one of the best drivers of the season. He definitely went under my radar a bit. Like, I just didn't notice how good he was doing, like, because he was just quietly getting on with it. It wasn't like everyone was going, oh my God, look at Charles, because there's almost like drivers in worse cars doing better than him, but like they would do it on the odd occasion, whereas Charles was doing it consistently. So consistently throughout the season, he was just having a pretty good time, apart from when him and his teammate would sometimes hit each other. But yeah.
Apart from one of the worst things to do in F1. I think
that
also
happened all the time with those two, and I wasn't surprised.
Yeah, I think it's where, without him, if you had another Vettel in that seat or a Raikkonen in that seat, Ferrari would be where McLaren were. They'd be in that bracket of awful, kind of, in the way, they'd be in 7th place in the constructors, and but because of how well he's done, he's avoided that. They are, they're still above that level, and I think that's entirely down to him, really.
I think Charles Leclerc has put in 2 contenders for drive of the season, which is his Austria podium for P2, which just mega fantastic performance from a car that was a dog that whole weekend. Every time he got on board with the Ferrari, it looked like it was about to crash, and he pulled that up to 2nd place at the end of the race, which is just purely Charles Leclerc, purely the fantastic
about the next
skill that he
weekend.
had. Yeah, the next weekend where he plans the back of Vettel, we don't need to mention, but the Austrian Grand Prix weekend was brilliant, and where he came from basically being 2 positions off the back of the first lap in Turkey to being second by the time he got to before he went a little bit deep and lost the podium, I think that one would have been even better if he hadn't made that mistake at the end and had got P2 then. Those 2 drives were exceptional and pure talent from Charles Leclerc, above and beyond the rest of the field. As everything else seemed to go a bit wrong for people, he managed to pull himself up there and do a fantastic job that I think is going to be hard to beat when he's in a competitive car. We saw he got the most pole positions of anyone in 2019 in his first year with Ferrari. If that Ferrari was really good this year, he's definitely driven better. So he's going to be a thorn in everyone's side, I think, in the future. I think we don't need to have any worries about any of that. I think the only person who needs to worry is Carlos Sainz. We'll get onto that in a bit when we start to talk about 2021 a touch. Two other drivers who I think definitely performed fantastically this year. We're going to talk about both. They're two race winners, two first-time race winners, Pierre Gasly and Sergio Perez, ex-Red Bull driver and the incumbent Red Bull driver. So we're going to start with Gasly. He definitely has had a coming-of-age year after a really, really difficult 2019. His redemption arc with that Brazil podium seemed to be completed, but it just went one step further with a win in Monza that he really, you could tell he wanted it. You could tell he was driving the absolute socks off of that AlphaTauri around Monza when he had Sainz charging behind him in definitely a fast McLaren, a McLaren that was running P2 on pace before anything bad happened in the race, before any of the Kevin Magnussen's breaking down moments. Sainz was running P2 and he stayed P2 at the flag because of the way Gasly drove there. And not only that, he outqualified Kvyat the majority of the race. I think Kvyat's first chance to really get alongside Gasly was in Spa, and then Gasly went and had an absolutely brilliant drive there as well. Ed, what do you think about Pierre Gasly? You cited him earlier as one of your top drivers of the year.
I would say Gasly has been one of the best. We knew that AlphaTauri was good right from word go. That car was much better, but we did not expect Gasly to take it to the heights he did. Destroyed Kvyat, was constantly in the top 6. The win at Monza, as you said, which was for me one of the greatest drives I have seen from a guy who wasn't in the top 3 teams, sorry. And you've got to also think qualified 4 for Imola as well. He had that really good performance at Imola where he should have got at least another podium before the engine conks out. For me, he's come of age since Red Bull. I think a lot of people were writing him off for what had happened 2019 with what happened with Verstappen. But he seems more at peace with himself. He seems much more calmer, much more skilled. He knows what to do now. And now he's a race winner. It's just going to build his confidence even more. But he's won it on merit. He didn't win it on luck. He won it on pure skill. Because Carlos Sainz is no slouch, and Sainz could have easily sent it anywhere around Monza. So for Gasly to hold on, to Gasly to get his results, for me, he's been one of the best this season. And you've got to hand it to him. It has been full-on redemption. But we knew he had it. We knew he had it from the first season, 2018. It's just proving people that this guy is something special.
Nigel, I think you might have something to add on that. I think you'll probably have maybe a slightly not quite the best driver of the year opinion, which a lot of people might disagree with.
Yeah, you pretty much said what I wanted to say there, Freddie. I don't know. He doesn't. The 5 drivers for me this year: Verstappen, Hamilton, Ricciardo, Leclerc, and Sainz. I would say, I think Gasly's second half of the season was a little disappointing, considering how well he was doing. I'm not sure why Kvyat started beating him. I just think the way he's ended the season, I don't know, it's a tough one. I don't want to say he's not consistent, because in the first half of the season he was excellent and definitely one of the best drivers out there. But I just think he's lacked pace in the latter stages of the year.
I think it's important to remember where he was coming into the season, because he very easily could have been where Albon is now, out of a drive and, with his F1 career in jeopardy. Because, coming back from Red Bull, he had everything to prove. He'd just flopped there, and that's kind of, where ultimately, if he's at AlphaTauri, there should be that should be the end goal. So, he had to come back and have a really strong season to, prove that he could do a job there for another year at least, and to prove to other teams in the long term that, he'd be a good number 1 driver for a midfield team at the least. And I think, he has done that. And yeah, as you said, his Monza win, I think it was fully deserved. Some people have said it wasn't because Sainz was faster. But, I think he drove everything out of that car to be able to keep pace with Sainz, so that Sainz only caught him with, a lap or 2 to go. So I think, and he's had, he got through to Q3 quite a few times. He did, a lot of standout drives in you know, he in many ways he was a kind of midfield driver in a car that was in a weird middle ground between, you know, the Alfa
We
Romeo.
don't know how good
Class
that
1.
car was, though, do we?
I think it was between the midfield and the Class C for me.
With Ferraris a lot, so I don't know. Like they fought with each other, which just showed how bad Ferrari. Well, say Ferrari, I mean like Sebastian a lot. It just showed how bad the season was for Ferrari to be fighting with an Alfa Tauri.
I mean, he scored the same as Lance Stroll. He scored more than Esteban Ocon. You know, and I think they were in
really
much
good.
faster cars. So, yeah, for me, I definitely put him in my top 5 because, you know, he was a really strong driver. He outperformed Fiat, and, you know, just looking at where he was coming into the season versus where he is coming out of it, I think he's probably had the biggest transformation over that time, or positive transformation.
Yeah, he definitely is. I think that's a good way of putting it. Definitely the most positive transformation. And Nigel's right. Kvyat did get on top towards the end of the year, but in Abu Dhabi, Kvyat's race just was gloriously Kvyat. He had a brilliant 7th place to grabs in a track you can't overtake at, and he finished in 11th. And Gasly finished in the points. So Kvyat did get there on pace. He understood the car, but way too late. The way Gasly understood that car was from the get-go, and yes, he was able to use that all year. His Silverstone drive, I think, goes under the radar, but that was a fantastic weekend for AlphaTauri as well. So I think it's hard to look at negatives for Pierre's season. Sergio Perez as well took a debut win. He took his time to get on the podium. It's been a weird year for Checo. He's obviously he's been the storyline for so long because he's looked like he's going to be out of the seat until just before Christmas, where Red Bull finally confirmed that he would be a stopgap for them while they train Yuki Tsunoda in AlphaTauri, basically. They think he can
Leave
get
Yuki alone. That's all I've got to say. Leave him alone.
Hopefully Yuki Tsunoda can withstand the pressures that are going to now be on Sergio Perez for next year. But do we think Sergio Perez can handle it based on this year? He took his first win at the Sakhir Grand Prix. Not a bad drive either. Not a lucky drive. Mercedes made legitimate mistakes, and he drove from 18th to 3rd already anyway. Brilliant driver. I think it's definitely been his best season in Formula One for me. Not just because he's been a major storyline, but because he definitely should have had 2 other podiums as a result of it, at least. And not only that, he finished 4th after missing 2 races. Adam, do you want to jump in on Checo?
No, to be honest, he's probably the driver I've got the least to say about, but I can have a go. Yeah, I think going into next season is going to be an interesting one. But again, a driver that's really improved throughout the season. It looked like Lance was on top for the first, I don't know, half maybe to Monza. And, you know, he could have had a 5th place, a well-deserved 5th place starting from the back of the grid at Styria if he hadn't clouted Albon at the end and kind of dropped back a bit. So
could have had 4th.
Yeah, and yes, actually. And yeah, as you say, he looked like the driver who might miss out on his champagne moment through the season, the midfield driver who do that when, you know, Ricciardo is getting a podium, Stroll, Sainz, Norris, Lando and Gasly, you know, had all got theirs, and he looked like he might miss out. And then, yeah, he just, you know, came back. I think, again, the Sakhir win, it's a difficult one because, you know, I think by rights that Russell's, but at the same time, when the leader's out, then, you know, it's a free-for-all as to who's going to get it. And, you know, out of the midfield, he was the driver who should have been in the worst position to get it because he'd gone to the back of the race. You know, it probably should have been Albon coming through to get it. And, you know, he put himself in the position to benefit from bad luck to the driver in front, which, you know, that's what he'll need for his next year at Red Bull as well. He'll be expected to be the driver who picks up the places at the very least when, you know, Mercedes are on a bad day, if not challenging them.
I think you kind of, if you flip Gasly's season, that's kind of what Perez's season has been like. And I think that's where the downfall for both of them for me is that they've lacked consistency across the whole year, unlike, say, Ricciardo, who I think was on form throughout the season. But you know, I even think Racing Point, they could have even been pushing Red Bull like in the constructors, had they put it all together, because they made so many mistakes early on, and I think I can't help but feel this might be a bit controversial. I think both drivers have underperformed, like in terms of in terms of the car they had. I really think they could have got more out of this year.
That's a really interesting opinion, that, Nigel. Would you care to say a bit
Definitely
more?
should have beaten McLaren, 100%. How they haven't beaten McLaren, I don't know.
Would they, if the 15 points had not been taken, would they have beaten McLaren?
If they
they would have just.
If Sergio Perez's engine hadn't blown in Bahrain, that would have been 15 points from third place.
Yeah.
So it's not just the 15 points they were deducted for breaking the rules.
They lost it on reliability.
Yeah,
I kind of agree. I think they underperformed to an extent. But however, I think Sergio had a really, really good season. I think he really showcased his talent, by the end of the season. At first, when Seb got the seat, and so did Lance, I wasn't like, I wasn't too bothered. And then towards the end of the season, I was like, nah, Sergio Perez really just need a seat. And I can't remember when I started saying it, but I said it a long time ago that he would be the perfect fit for Red Bull. Mainly because also they were losing a sponsor, because I knew, Aston Martin are going, not because Aston Martin are now a team. But, he, in a way, it like Nigel said, the season flipped, because at first, probably till Monza, he was not the stronger driver in that Racing Point. Lance Stroll was the stronger driver, whether people will admit it or not. They kind of had a season of both halves where they flipped. One was better in one half, one was better in the other half. And they should have just been good in both halves, because then they probably would have secured third a lot easier. But that didn't. I think that's what stands out. I think Gasly and Perez both get put into the best driver category, because they are both won races, and not everybody wins a race that isn't in a strong car. Well, not in one of the top two.
Yeah, I think especially for Gasly. I think maybe less so for Checo, because I think people were putting him in that before the second last race.
Yeah,
especially after Bahrain. But
Checo got multiple podiums, whereas Gasly didn't. And you have to say, okay, Checo was on for podium several times, was fighting in a car, whereas Gasly wasn't always doing that. So I think that's why Gasly gets put where he gets put, because he won a single race. And I'm not disputing that, because I think he did a phenomenal job in the AlphaTauri. I just think that's why he gets put where he is.
I think also it's just worth remembering Racing Point didn't start a race, and they had a sub Nico Hulkenberg who was on the back foot for 2 races as well. So I think, who knows kind of what the effect was. And they had Lance Stroll and Checo both had COVID, and it looks like for Lance Stroll that did. He had more of a long-term effect,
especially in Portugal, where he had a howler. I think really Racing Point didn't get going until the second Silverstone meeting.
Yeah,
they were a bit behind.
I think
we were talking about at the time. We were talking about at the time that Racing Point hadn't taken advantage when they needed to. They were in a car they clearly weren't going to be upgrading much. They said at the start of the season, we're only going to really put one big upgrade on this car. We need to make the most of the start, and they didn't. They missed out on what could have been a sure second place in Austria. They didn't do well in the wet in Styria, because that could have also been definite podium, really, perhaps. In Hungary, they got qualified 3rd and 4th and missed out on a podium there. They missed out on so much, to be fair, for Racing Point.
It was once Hulkenberg got 3rd at the second Silverstone meet that the tide changed. And then at Spain, Lance Stroll had a fantastic start. It was right up there in Valtteri. He made an absolute corker of a getaway. Spa, things weren't that great. And then Monza, Stroll got that podium, which they should have had races ago. But you could also said Lance should have won at Monza as well. But if and buts, Lando should have won at Monza. Esteban should have won at Monza.
Lando's convinced he should have had a podium at Monza. Do you know what I mean? Because he thinks because Stroll pitted under the safety car that he should have had under the red flag. Sorry, he should have had a podium. Yeah. So it's argument that I agree to an extent, but it's everyone could have done everything in those races.
Yeah,
everyone would have had the same excuse, whoever achieved the result.
Yeah,
exactly. My argument would have been that 7 or 8 drivers could have won that day, but obviously they didn't time it right. They cocked up.
Well, Hamilton should have won in Monza.
Oh, Hamilton should have won.
He was streets ahead, and I think I was reporting on it by about lap 20. I wrote in that he won.
Which race was it? is Monza the one because he got 2 penalties in like 2 races? Monza the one where he got it because the pit lane was closed, or
Yeah,
pit lane.
and the
Yeah.
Russia's the start one.
Yes.
Mercedes basically should not. Basically, that's down to Mercedes. It wasn't really down to Hamilton's
Yeah.
driving
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
Because
the
he
way
can't see.
the way
He's driving at speed. He's not going to see an X on the board. Is
Yeah.
the
he?
excuse they said
No.
for that was the way they had their telemetry viewing was the page that it came up saying pit lane entry closed was they weren't on that page on one of their screens because they wouldn't
I
normally.
think it was
go on
something
that.
like
So
it
I
went
think-
to Brackley. It
Oh,
went to
well,
like
there.
the race
It wasn't
team
even-
at
didn't even go
Brackley.
to the
I could be
right
making
people.
this up.
Wow.
But I
you
think
might
it
be
was
right.
like it went to Brackley, and then the time delay between them noticing it and sending it through to the team at
Yeah.
Monza was just too much. I mean, I would say just on Perez, Red Bull wouldn't be taking him if they thought he was underperforming.
No.
No.
Exactly.
I
That's a
think,
good point. That's a good point.
yeah,
They
you know,
wouldn't take.
they want to
wouldn't-
stay with Albon, but you know, it's just that Perez has made
He
that an
wasn't
impossible choice, and
performing.
Albon has made that
Yeah.
an impossible.
Albon dropped a few clangers, especially in Eiffel, where
You can-
Eiffel was the big turning point
Yeah,
in the
I
end of
agree,
Alex
actually.
Albon, because what he did, he drove a bit like how Gasly drove in that
Oh,
Red Bull,
yeah.
amateurish, hitting Kvyat and then going on the radio.
That was awful.
They raced me so hard. I don't think Christian Horner's listened to that and thought, yeah, I agree with that. He probably thought, what are we doing here? Sergio
sounded
Perez out of
petulant.
contract. Nico
You
Hülkenberg's out of
consider-
contract. What
you
do you
consider
do?
the way Alex was driving. It's hard. His career ended a long time ago, and I love Alex, but he
Yeah, I like
had to be
Alex.
dropped.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I thought he should have been dropped in August.
You didn't think he should have been
Honestly,
called up, to be fair. You should
Yeah,
have
yeah.
been in the
That's
contract.
actually a good. That's actually a good point. But what would they have done if they hadn't called up Albon for Red
Pick
Bull?
Fiat.
Would Gasly have finished that season in 2019? I don't think he would have.
And I think
Nigel?
Red Bull don't have options this
What was the
year,
question?
whereas last year they had options.
What do you think they should have done if instead of promoting Albon?
Oh, I said Kvyat, didn't I? I've always said I think they should have promoted Danny Kvyat just because it gives them. You can put Albon and Gasly together to see which one's better, and then you can go from there, and it gives
Yeah.
them time. Whereas they rushed into it with Albon. So yeah, I've always said they should have promoted Danny Kvyat.
I think.
He had the experience as well.
Yeah, I think they should promote Nico Hülkenberg, but in 2019. But
Yeah, well,
What do I
yeah.
know? What do I know?
Speaking of people who have had chances with Red Bull and haven't had chances with Red Bull, perhaps we could go on to Daniel Ricciardo, do you think? Because we've cited him there a few times as having a
Yeah.
really good
Yeah,
season. He's been
definitely.
consistently very good. He is the Renault driver. He is the Renault position in the Constructors' Championship. Renault only really had any hope of fighting for third in that Constructors' fight because of Daniel Ricciardo. How do we rate his season? Do we think it's his best season in Formula One?
Nigel, you
Um,
said he was top 5, didn't you?
I think he's top 5.
I
definitely.
agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'd
think
say
he's
top
had
five.
like I didn't realize how good a season Daniel had because I think it's just like you expect Daniel to just be in the points because he's Daniel Ricciardo, and like I remember someone saying, "Oh, has he like lost it? Like, is it because last season wasn't his greatest, and I think he wasn't settled in at Renault, and I don't think he was settled in Renault, and it was a lot easier for Hulkenberg. He was up against Hulkenberg as well, and Hulkenberg's a very good teammate, very strong driver. But this season Daniel came into his own, made Renault his own, and really kind of showcased like Esteban Ocon what you need to be a top driver. Because I still think Daniel's one of the top drivers in the sports. He might not be in the top 2-3 teams anymore, but he's still one of the best drivers we have in the sport, and he proved that again this year. Got 2 podiums with Renault, which I don't think he expected. I think, and that was quite nice to see him back on the podium. I don't think there's anyone that really hates Daniel Ricciardo, so like that was really nice to see him back on the podium. And see him up there again, racing for those positions that he should be racing for, because he is a good enough driver. And I think he had at first it was very quietly, he was doing really well, and then suddenly I was like, oh, Daniel's like consistently in the points. He was just chipping away, and just basically, as you said, he made a lot of those points up for Renault over Ocon because Ocon was a bit underwhelming.
It wasn't a great this season for Danny Rick in 2019, and 2020 it started badly because of the internal rift between him and Cyril, because they were throwing insults at each other when Danny went to McLaren.
I think Daniel's made the right decision going to McLaren.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought he should have gone 2 years. I thought he should have gone 2 years ago, but
of course, I would definitely agree. But I feel Danny Rick got the best out of that car that Esteban couldn't. I mean, he got third on the grid at Silverstone, which was a great achievement at the time. We were all thinking, my word, what's gone to Danny Rick's seat? But he just was there bad, and he was pushing hard. He should have got another podium in Mugello. Those 2 podiums he got were well earned. This was the year that really Danny Rick rebuilt his Formula One career after that poor season in 2019. We all knew what he had. We all knew what he got. But we didn't know if he could really do it outside the Red Bull bubble. He proved he could.
I'm not sure.
As well, he was rebuilding a lot of his and this is just what my opinion. I think he was rebuilding a lot of his mental health, because I don't think Red Bull was the nicest place to be, and I'll stand by that. I think he was building a lot of that in 2019. I think there was a lot of factors to why his season wasn't so good as this year. Because last year it didn't even seem like he wasn't as cheery as he was. He wasn't as Daniel Ricciardo as we're used to. Whereas this year, it's been like, oh, it's Daniel Ricciardo. Like, he's back, he's smiling, he's doing all this goofy stuff that we're used to, and that was quite nice to see.
I think I'd agree with that. I disagree with Ed's point, though, that it was rebuilding his career or whatever, because McLaren hired him before the season started. Before he'd had all this good stuff this season, all they had to go off was his Renault time previously, which, as we said, was pretty bad.
It wasn't that bad. I don't think last year was very bad. He beat Nico Hulkenberg.
I think it was bad on his standards.
Yeah,
that's why
Nico Hulkenberg is excellent. He beat Nico Hulkenberg hand over fist. He killed his career, and I think he did justify what Renault were paying him last year. I think, and he brought that into this
public
year.
perception.
It didn't help the 2019 car was as dull. Let's be honest. It blew up half the time.
Yeah, he didn't have the car to do it. He didn't have the tools.
No, but relative to what, relative to the fact that he left Red Bull to go to Renault because he thought that was kind of where he'd be able to build his career, I think it was bad in that sense. But, we all knew he had it. And for me, he wouldn't be in my top 5 drivers of the year, just because I think...
What mistakes has he made this year?
He just went missing in a few races, and I don't think he had the same arc.
That was when Renault went missing.
That's when
he went missing. Ocon went.
I don't think
where
you blame
Renault
him.
though. I don't know where Renault were at really, because it's hard to take a point off Ocon.
If you look
at
where
they were at,
if you look at where if you take it as an instance where Ricciardo had the car, he performed well. He got 4th place in Silverstone. He obviously got his 3rd place in Nürburgring. That's pure pace, and when they didn't have the pace, Ocon was way back in like 15th or 16th, and Ricciardo was like 11th or 12th. Anyway, Ricciardo was still ahead of Ocon, even when they were down there. Like at Barcelona, Renault were nowhere to be seen, I grant you, but both Renaults were nowhere to be seen. It's not like he had a teammate. He was always.
I know he finished out the points, but what happened at Silverstone too? Because that was a track they were going into.
That's his.
Monza was the same, kind of going in thinking, "Oh, we can smash it," and they didn't. Really.
Silverstone 2,
he wasn't in the position to pick up the. Sorry, but Silverstone 2, he wasn't. Sakia, he wasn't in the kind of position to pick up the podium, or kind of when I think he could have been.
For Sakia, the reason he wasn't in the position was because he was on the conventional strategy, in the same way that Sainz was, in the same way that Norris was, in the same way that someone else was. I think I want to say Stroll, but I don't know. So in the same way they didn't get. Oh no, not Stroll, someone else. Because they took the conventional strategy, and then meant that the going long Stroll, Perez, and Ocon could jump them basically. So that was just a different strategy, put him and so many other drivers out of play. But he was already in play early on in the fight for the podium in that race. Silverstone 2, granted, was not good. I think Renault went on soft tyres when everyone else was on hards, and they just didn't work.
Monza was a disaster. If you think about it, that should be the track that Renault does really well at, because they did well in 2019 with an average car. They came into 2020, better car, didn't get near the podium. Danny Rick had that great start, but just never made that much progress afterwards. They got caught out by the red flag. So that was one they should have got a podium at.
Again, I don't think you can blame Ricciardo though for Renault's strategy.
Renault screwed up. Renault screwed up at Monza.
He was still ahead of Ocon at every point, really.
Exactly.
Apart from the qualifying in the steering Grand Prix, where Ocon showed he's a brilliant driver, but couldn't do it for the rest of the year, which is so frustrating. We'll get onto that later.
Which was a Sakia, where obviously Ocon was on the podium, Danny Rick wasn't, but in a way, a lot of people are like, oh, Ocon got a bit lucky with his strategy. And, you know, so it wasn't actually on pure pace that Ocon was ahead of Ricciardo. So
it was the right idea to put that strategy on Ocon, but he was only on that strategy because he started 11th, unfortunately for him.
Yeah. So in a way, you know, over the season, Ricciardo's had a pretty good season against his teammate and had some pretty good results.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think he's had a good season, and he in himself, you know, he's in a position now to go to McLaren where I think he can really push on. Whereas I think if he was going to McLaren at the end of last season, you know, it would be more difficult. He wouldn't, you know, be in that frame of mind. But to me, I think, you know, 5 of the drivers have had better years than him. I'll probably put him 6th.
Yeah, but across the season,
I think Ricciardo's.
I don't remember him making any mistakes. And yes, Gasly and Perez had the highlights, but if you looking at consistency, 17 races, I think Ricciardo's third even.
I think Ricciardo's up there with Verstappen, Leclerc, and Hamilton. Not Verstappen and Leclerc. In terms of overall driver skill, I think 4 of them best 4 drivers in Formula One. I think. We'll be in this conversation for ages. I think we're in a bit of a rut now. So I think we should take this segue and link it to Ricciardo signing for McLaren, as Adam has done, which was the one of the latest pieces in a puzzle that was started when Ferrari announced midway through lockdown 1 in the UK at least that they were sacking Sebastian Vettel after the end of 2020 before a racing lap has been turned. This led to a massive domino effect. Immediately, Carlos Sainz was announced by Ferrari, leaving McLaren. McLaren then announced Daniel Ricciardo, obviously, and then Vettel later on in the season was signed to Aston Martin, which led to the previous stuff we've chatted about, Perez going now to Red Bull. So this driver market has been pretty busy this year. There's been a lot of musical chairs, which we didn't have coming into 2020. It seemed to set it up for 2021. What was weird about this, I think, was that it all happened before a racing lap had been turned, apart from for Perez and Alonso, basically. Alonso joining Renault, obviously. So what do we think going into 2021? Who do we think's made the best move?
Perez could have been at Williams. Like
Perez,
we thought Perez would be going to Williams in about October. Now he's at Red Bull.
Perez pulled an Uno reverse card on Racing Point because he went, well, you guys can be 3rd or 4th place. I'm going to go to 2nd best team on the grid. And I've won some races now. But I think one of the best moves is Daniel. I think he's made a very, very good decision going to McLaren. I think it's a really good atmosphere for him. I think, and I'm putting this out there, I'm not dissing Lando. I think he'll beat Lando very comfortably. Personally, I just think Lando's a tad overrated. Not gonna lie to you guys. So I think he could easily beat Lando. I think it'll be a tough battle, but I think he'll easily do it. I think just the experience he has. And I think he's made a decision where he can, because McLaren now, you know, they're back with Mercedes as well, a partnership which I adore. So I'm kind of glad that's back together. You know, that's going to be a really big thing for them. However, it could be a year where they need to settle into this new engine, a new supplier, because they had that a bit with Renault, you know, wasn't the easiest first year. Don't know how that's going to be because they have literally got the best engine on the grid, so it could be completely different, you know, could be a very easy swap. So I think that could just build into a really good partnership, because I think McLaren obviously want to get back to where they were, which is winning. And I think they're going in the right direction to do that.
Yeah, I think I think midway through the season, or after Ricciardo got his 2 podiums, I was thinking, you know, actually should he have stayed at Renault? But kind of looking at the bigger picture, the key difference to me is that McLaren are one of the biggest names in F1. They're the biggest powers. You've got Ferrari, Williams, Lotus, McLaren are kind of the big 4. And, you know, probably add Mercedes to that actually now. But, you know, Renault aren't that. You know, they've had good years in F1 and they've had a good year this year. But, you know, ultimately, McLaren, you know, has won the Holy Grails as a driver, I think, you know, coming into it. If I was going in, that would be the team I'd want to drive for. So, you know, I think, as Ellie said, it might not be immediately successful, but I think, you know, they both both drivers have got time. The team have got time, and I think they have got a leadership structure that will be more patient now for them to wait and then, you know, kick on into 2021, 22, 23. You know, whenever it is that they do start to come good. So yeah, I think outside of Perez, actually, because Ricciardo to McLaren, Perez could well just be a 1 year thing. Same with Sainz to Ferrari for 2 years. I think Ricciardo probably has the best long term.
Yeah.
Ricciardo's got a team that want him, I think, now. I think if he was at Renault, definitely they do like him there. They have loved him there this year. But Renault is a team that will happily shuffle you aside if they get a whiff of potentially having Fernando Alonso. And they didn't have to have that difficult conversation with any of their drivers because one got out of the seat. But I do think there would have been a chance that maybe 2022 that Fernando Alonso would have come knocking at Renault and they would have given him a seat and would have made it a lot harder for Ricciardo. I think Ricciardo's now, like you say, with the leadership position at McLaren and stuff like that, he's coming into a team that is going to be his team in a way that Renault was half his team. But Renault at the end of the day was always going to be Renault or Alpine or whatever they are. They're always going to be the brand. As McLaren is, I think, has much more possibility to be the team for Ricciardo. Ed, did you have something you wanted to put in there?
I'll chime in with this one. I think Perez with the first year will probably have a year or two, so it might not. It depends on how quick he settles in. I think Vettel's made a good move to Aston Martin. You know, he wasn't happy at Ferrari, and then he comes in. He's got the second, third best car on the grid. He's pretty much won the lottery. For Aston Martin, it would be huge for that team. They're getting a 4-time world champion. They're getting a huge marketing base in Germany. They can promote him everywhere. You know, he can build himself up as a team leader again. He doesn't have to worry about a Charles figure. He can coach Lance as well. If you think about it, Lance needs just that little bit more coaching to be a really good driver.
I agree. I think like Aston Martin, that's a really good move for him. But and I think we'll finally get, you know, old Seb back where he's just such a good racing driver, because I don't think he's had that ability to do that this year in that Ferrari. I think we'll finally see some. I think we might see a few podiums off Seb next year because he's that good. You know, he'll just, if he adapts to the car well, or the cars, I don't imagine the car will be adapted around him because he hasn't raced this year, so he hasn't had much input. But I imagine, like you said, he'll be pretty good to see.
He likes a car with a good, stable rear end, and that's basically what's characterised the Racing Point this year.
Also the fact
so that'll suit him.
He also works better, I feel, when he's got a team around him. He didn't really have that for Ferrari, but he will have that at Aston Martin.
They're really going to want to they're going to be like, this is our, like I said, when I first wrote the article, which never expected to fucking happen, I was like, oh, Seb should go to Aston Martin. But then I put, won't happen. Perez is in a 3-year contract and Lance Stroll is the son of the owner. And I was like, well, think about it. There's so many things, you know, he's not got as much pressure on him anymore, so he can drive as well as he wants. And he doesn't have any pressure to perform. He doesn't have to, because Ferrari, there's a whole bloody country on your back. You know, you've got to perform, otherwise they're coming for your necks, you know. And they haven't done that this year. And I said, you know, he's a 4-time world champion, and Aston Martin are a brand new brand. They're not a brand new brand coming into F1, but they're new technically, and they need somebody to, you know, push them forward. And a 4-time world champion would do that exactly. So they're going to be like, yeah, we've got to do things to please this guy. So they're going to, you know, give him what he wants.
This is what makes me think.
At least giving Freddie some work on the fucking swear word censoring. I like
so
it.
You now.
But yeah, no.
Do we have a bleep machine?
Oh,
yes,
it's much easier.
Looking at you. No, I think I will just inject some pessimism in that. You know, is Seb at that level anymore? You know, I think
he's not. I agree.
Compared, you know, I'll do another cross-sport comparison. Is Mark Cavendish in cycling the greatest sprinter of all time? But you know, he's not been at that level for a few years. He's bounced around a few teams, but you know, I think people are at a level where they can perform like that. I think George Best was another one, and then you know they lose it, and I'm just not sure, really, for Seb. You know, I think it's a good move in terms of him, in himself, in his own head. You know, I think it will improve him being out of Ferrari, being away from Charles. But on the flip side, you know, I'm not expecting great things from him, really. I'm kind of expecting it to be you know, kind of the next chapter of, you know, his journey from 4-time world champion to retirement. And I think it's kind of that for me. You know, I'm not professing to be a Seb fan. I never have been, but you know, I do like him around the grid, and I think I've appreciated a lot more this year, especially with his support for the BLM. Going back to our first episode, but you know, I just don't think. To me, I don't think, you know, there is that level in him anymore. So yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts.
I think the worst move that's been made is that of Carlos Sainz. Not because Ferrari are in a dire position, because Ferrari will come back. It's because every other move.
I don't think you're wrong.
Ricciardo's made a move to make him lead of McLaren. Vettel is now going to be basically lead of Aston Martin. Alonso has come in as lead of Renault. All these teams have set themselves up with a lead driver. And Ferrari have done that by getting rid of Sebastian Vettel and bringing in Carlos Sainz to be a willing number 2, basically. So Carlos Sainz has gone from a team where he is lead driver. Ricciardo has stolen Sainz's golden boy position at McLaren, and he's lost it to go to Ferrari, a team which could well be in a really good position in 2022, could be in a great position next year. But it's just, he's not going to be the star of the team in the way that Charles Leclerc is definitely going to be. So I think for me, Carlos Sainz is the one who's made the worst move out of all of these driver machinations.
Which is ironic, because he was the second domino to fall, and he was the one that kind of kick-started a lot of the musical chairs, because, you know, it was a kind of direct team-to-team move, whereas Vettel at first was taking himself out of it. Yeah, I think I'd be tempted to agree with you, actually. I guess Perez, maybe there's a bit more risk because it's 1 year and, you know, kind of against Verstappen. But yeah, I think I'd probably agree. On the flip side, though, who's going to Ferrari? Like, this is what most F1 drivers kind of dream of. You know, he's getting that shot at Ferrari, and, you know, after 2 years, you know, if he performs well, then, you know, there's a chance of extending that. If not, I still think he'll have an F1 career, you know, ahead of him. He'll only be 26 by then, something like that. You know, he'll be mid-20s.
Yeah, late 20s. He will be in his 7th or 8th season in Formula One in his time at Ferrari, basically.
I think, you know, you're right, though. He is like making probably the most like you're saying, pessimistic move of the bunch, because he's going into Ferrari, who have built their team around Charles. However, I think he's going to give Charles a bit more pain than they are anticipating. I don't think he's going to be as number 2-y as they probably want him to be. He's not going to be a Kimi Raikkonen. If they wanted that, they should have put Giovinazzi in the car.
Yeah,
I hope that's the case.
It comes across very Ivan Capelli, arriving in the team where you've been number 1, and then you come into a team in transition with a top talent, and you're basically you're warming the seat up for Mick Schumacher, as has been said by Mattia Binotto.
It's basically what he said.
By your new boss, literally.
He said the day after he came to Ferrari. Oh, the next day he's like, yes, Mick probably will be in the car in 2023. Wow, I don't think that's what Carlos wants to hear.
I don't think Carlos was looking at the contract and think, hang on, seat warmer.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be more of a headache for Ferrari management. Binotto struggled to handle Seb and Charles at times.
If it's a headache, it's easier to get rid of him, because then they can say, "Oh, it's not the atmosphere we want." If he's bad, then it'll be easier to get rid of him as well. It feels like a rock and a hard place for Carlos.
It's going to feel like a massive headbanging moment for Binotto, because them two are not good. I don't think them two will get on.
He's ill.
Is Binotto? Oh yeah, been ill. Has he got what was it?
Herpes, apparently.
Herpes. Yeah,
bless him.
Bad luck, mate.
He's been getting around with that Mattia Binotto.
Jesus. Lads, anybody. I think for me, it's going to be a headache for Ferrari next season. These two are not going to get on, I don't think, when they realise Carlos is not going to be number 2. So it's going to be interesting to see which one fights over that. It's really, they basically cocked each other's careers up. Binotto's basically went in the sack pretty much before they even begun, unless they stick Mick Schumacher in that car. I think Carlos, if he doesn't perform, he may have just killed his own career. That's my thought, because Ferrari are ruthless with guys. When they don't perform, they sack them.
Speaking of Mick Schumacher, oh, you go, Adam.
I was just going to say, I think there is a worry because the last 2 seasons at McLaren, I think especially this season against Norris, has kind of solidified it a bit more that, you know, his quality. But if you're looking at his F1 career previous to that, you know, he'd not held his own with Verstappen at Toro Rosso, and then, you know, gone to Renault and not really been able to make that work either. And Hulkenberg, you know, kind of dominated him really. Well, not dominated, but, you know, had the upper hand. And then going to McLaren, yes, he finished top last season, but that was against a rookie, Norris, who had his fair share of retirements. But I think looking at this season, he has, you know, against a maturing Norris, about halfway through the season or a third of the way through the season.
He's always there, isn't he?
It looked like he could be in trouble, but he has just turned it up to another level, you know, especially I think since Monza or the Nürburgring, you know, he's just been in the top 6 all the time. So
since Silverstone, really. Silverstone, he was running 4th and then he got a puncture. He basically would have been the 3rd place pickup after Bottas's puncture if he hadn't got his own puncture, basically. Sainz was, since around Silverstone, basically, he's been the lead McLaren driver. Norris peaked at the beginning of his year and then stayed there, which is good. But Sainz got to that level and then got a little bit faster than it. Norris tops and tailed the season, but Sainz was there for the whole thing.
I think the trouble is with also Sainz, he is at times very inconsistent. Like last season, his qualifying was absolutely terrible. That's why he was called a smooth operator, because he had the car to smash through the field. Will Ferrari hack that if Carlos gets knocked out of Q2 like Seb did? I'm not so sure. For me, it's a powder cake. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Every driver on that grid wants to drive in red. There's no question about it. If you ask all of them, they will say, I want to drive Ferrari one day. I want to drive Ferrari. Carlos,
I think Lewis would.
Well,
Not
Lewis
Lewis,
has got
no.
Lewis. Valtteri would go in a heartbeat.
Valtteri was denied.
No, Valtteri.
Ooh, that's
Williams
cold.
didn't let him move to Ferrari back in the day.
If I was Ferrari, I personally would have employed Valtteri Bottas to be Charles Leclerc's wingman.
Yeah, I would have employed.
And then I'm not just saying that because I want George Russell to be in the Mercedes or anything.
Biggest 2 fingers to Mercedes they could do.
I
Probably
think
wouldn't have beat Charles though.
What the biggest 2 fingers would have been if Seb had signed for Mercedes, Valtteri to Ferrari. My God, can you imagine Drive to Survive, that contract and the arguments between Toto and Matteo?
Oh man, if Drive to Survive are able to
I don't think Toto would argue, to be honest.
Toto would just stare. Toto would just stare.
Toto would be like,
Toto just openly dislikes Matteo Binotto this year. It's brilliant. It's hilarious.
Toto treats Matteo Binotto like that annoying kid at school who keeps the class behind every day of the week.
Because he's
So you forgot to give us
and he's
homework,
cool.
said Matteo Binotto.
And then Toto says outside of class, "Do not do that." Followed by Cyril grabbing him and Christian.
Yeah, when is Cyril coming to this?
Christian stealing his pack of Rolos afterwards and then running off.
Cyril's the secretly cool one, who everyone actually really kind of finds like, why is he in F1? What? He's actually kind of cool, but what? I don't get it. That's the Cyril a beatball conundrum.
The coolest one is Toto. 100%.
Oh, yeah.
How has this got into winging it fan fiction?
Winging it fan fiction is about us.
Zach's the lovable teddy bear that Zach's a lovable teddy bear that everyone loves and plays rugby.
I don't like Zach Brown. Oops.
Arrivederci.
And Franz Todd's the old man who's teaching, who's actually quite nice. If you get on the good side.
Bless.
Yeah.
Like a little teddy bear.
I like Franz Todd. Everyone needs a Franz Todd.
Before we start trying to figure out who Simon Roberts is, I think we should...
The new kid at school.
The new principal at Williams, if anyone actually didn't know who he was. Let's go on to some more topics, because we've been rambling along quite nicely. So I think we've got to get onto another topic so we can actually ramble about something else and have the time to do so. I'm going to throw something into you guys. Disappointment of the year. Who's disappointed you most this year?
Albon.
Who do you think?
It's
Adam's gone.
I was
with
thinking
Nigel's.
Ocon, and then I remembered Albon was a thing, because I did genuinely think he had the potential to be, a good number 2 driver at Red Bull after his half season there and his season at AlphaTauri. I thought he could, kick on, and he would be a good, he had the potential to grow into that role, and he hasn't. He's regressed. So it's not even close for me.
I'm going to add someone very different, Valtteri Bottas. I know he had his bad luck, but at times you wondered if it was an amateur driving, like with Turkey, Monza. He didn't look like getting anywhere near Lewis. And when George came along, he basically pulled his trousers down. It's for me, Valtteri, he has the talent on his day to be a superb driver. But times this season, I think, this guy's past it. This guy just does not have it at all. And it's a shame.
Worse than Albon, though.
Yeah, there's no
Albon
way.
Depends what you expect from Albon, though. That's where the question is.
Yeah, what do you expect from Albon? Albon you expect to be still sort of learning a little bit. Valtteri's had years.
To not be within 3/10 all season, though.
Valtteri spun about 10.
Bottas out-qualified Hamilton at times.
Valtteri spun 10 times. Valtteri spun 10 times at Turkey.
But Valtteri,
Yeah, but that's
one race.
One race. You can't judge
Monza.
on one.
Did you see his start at Monza? The human chicane.
Where was Albon at Monza?
Okay,
Where was Albon in
Albon
Turkey?
was hitting.
One person
hitting
speak. One person speak. Nigel,
Whoever's got the
go.
coach.
Oh, I've just got a question for Ed. What has Albon done well this year? That's
He
my
got
question.
we got 2 podiums.
that's
In
it.
a car, in the second best
He
car.
hasn't disgraced. He hasn't completely disgraced himself. There was at times when he did.
He hasn't.
Yeah, but hang on, Valtteri's in the best car in Formula One.
Valtteri
Yeah,
still
but he's
managed to win a
out-qualified
race.
Hamilton at times.
Yeah,
He's won 2 races.
2 races.
Yeah,
One he got
Sorry,
handed
was
to
that
him.
about Russia?
One he got handed to him, and one he won because Lewis decided to hit Albert.
Austria,
Got about 5 pole
Austria, he was
Austria.
the best driver. He was like a genuinely good performance. He got pole, and then he held Lewis behind him when they both had issues.
Lewis was compromised.
He's been close to, he's got poles against Lewis. He's, been within a 10th or so for a lot of races. And we're talking about one of, if not the greatest drivers of all time. And he's, been able to do that. And I think it's a bit harsh on Bottas because he's not meant to be a title challenger to Lewis. But because all of the other teams are so useless, Bottas kind of gets,
The brunt.
pushed into that role by everyone who wants to see a title fight.
Only thing, there's several things Bottas has done wrong this season. One of them is can't overtake Verstappen. I don't know why he's so scared of him. I can't tell you, but the man is afraid to overtake him. But is he still helping Mercedes get that first place? Yes, he's doing his job. The other thing he did wrong this season was he let a guy who has never driven the car before and came into the car was a 10th off, less than a 10th in pole off him, and then beat him in the start. Probably should have beat him in the race. That's what he's done wrong, but that proved a completely different debate. That proved that George Russell should be in that car over Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah, I think everyone can agree on that.
That's a different debate in itself. But Valtteri has done his job. Do I think he's good enough to be in that seat? Probably not, but he's not meant to be a world champion. I'm sorry, he will never be a world champion. He's not good enough. But has he done worse than Albon? No. I love Alex and I'm a big Alex fan. But I do feel really sad for Alex that he's lost his seat.
Yeah.
But this is F1. This is what it's like. And he did not perform in a car that was good enough to be on the podium. I do think he had a worse car than Verstappen, yes. But then again, it couldn't have been that worse because he still could have got more points than he did because the amount of times he ended up in the points and was out of the points was too many. He wasn't worse than Pierre, but we never know because Pierre didn't get the full season for us to see.
I think he was worse than Pierre.
I think
Got a season and a half
I would say so.
of Alex versus half a season of Pierre, so I can't really judge.
Yeah, I think it's a debate for another day. I don't think he was worse than Pierre. But if we're looking at disappointment over the season, then, it's partly got to be expectations coming into the season. Did anyone expect Valtteri to be doing better than this? I don't think that was a significant expectation. For Albon, there was an expectation that he'd be near Max. He'd be, what was it Horner said, within a few tenths, within 3 tenths?
Yeah.
Or Marco said, there was that expectation and he's not reached it. Bottas, I think he has kind of reached where, most people expected him to be, maybe a bit below, but not anywhere near Albon.
Bottas is underwhelming, yes, but I don't really expect less. It's just I think what the main frustration for people on Bottas genuinely does come from the fact they think George Russell should be in that car. That's where if George Russell didn't exist, I don't think people would really care if Bottas is in that car or not.
No, Bottas performed in consistency to his whole time at Mercedes. He is roughly out-qualified Hamilton a third of the time, which is basically his whole time at Mercedes. Genuinely, if you look at all the stats about it, he's basically finished ahead of him about a fifth of the time, which is consistent with every season he's had against Hamilton at Mercedes. So Bottas has just had a Bottas season. Bottas has done exactly what is Bottas at Mercedes. I think disappointment of the season for me is Esteban Ocon, because we all expected Esteban Ocon to do well, looking at how brilliant he was at Racing Point when he came in, and in the second season at Racing Point, he was his out qualifying record on Sergio Perez in their second year as teammates together was was ridiculous. It was like 17-4 or something like that, I think. So that's mad. And then he comes in and he out qualifies Ricciardo once in the dry. I expected Ocon to be much better than this.
Can I also nominate one more, Alfa Romeo, considering that they had a decent 2019. And then this year, they got
good points in 2019 with Kimi Räikkönen, and Giovinazzi was there and thereabouts in the second half of the season in 2019. He disappointed Giovinazzi more than Alfa Romeo, because he should have been way ahead of Räikkönen this year. And he started out the year ahead of Räikkönen.
Should not have an F1 seat, but that's
neither should Räikkönen. Neither of them should.
Neither of them should. Callum Ilott should be in F1, but
Well, it's unfortunately called the Piranha Club for a reason. Unfortunately, that's the thing. I think Alfa Romeo should have pushed on. They had 2 good seasons with 18-19. Admittedly, Charles was.
However, they did have an illegal engine.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Well, maybe we need to talk about that moment.
We'll do a PowerPoint presentation to the FIA. Explain why they will.
We'll never know.
George Russell to do that.
No, let's go in. Yeah, George will do it easy.
We'll win them over.
PowerPoint for anyone. Yeah, he would. He wins everyone over with his PowerPoint.
My point would be that Alfa Romeo should have pushed on and started to move deeper into the midfield this season, but they didn't.
I think they should have, but then I think they had an illegal engine for 2 years, so I don't think they could have done much more than what they did this year.
I agree with that.
That's also the whole of the midfield pushed on. To be honest, Renault were a lot better. Racing Point were a lot better, and McLaren improved again, and AlphaTauri improved by a massive
But it was quite nice to see Williams have somebody to battle. That was quite nice to watch.
Yeah. We don't like to see Williams get lapped 3 or 4 times. Not fun.
No, let them have someone to battle.
Yeah. What about Haas? Do you think that maybe they were a bit of a disappointment, considering
they just continued their?
I think they're just Haas.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't as bad as 2019 when they had Bad Santa running around the joint with his rich energy jacket.
2019 was awful for them, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2020 wasn't much better.
Shocking season.
One thing we'll put in, talking about Haas, which driver do you think we will miss the most then? Who leaving Formula One? I think for me, Kevin Magnussen, actually.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I'm gonna miss Kevin. It's not missing him. I'm really sad we didn't get to see Roman do his last race.
Yeah.
I think that's quite sad that we didn't get to see that. But he's okay, which is the most important. Yeah, I'm gonna miss Kevin a lot. I think he had a lot more potential than we ever got to see.
Yeah.
Who else is leaving the grid?
If it's
Danny Kvyat.
Alex. Danny, he had potential.
If it's gonna be the last time we're gonna see him, I think I'm gonna miss Nico Hulkenberg. I think we all, when he finished his career in 2019, I was like, okay, well, never really did it. And then he came back and he's just smashed it out of the ballpark. It's going to be sad that he won't be there. And if it was a 22-car grid, he would be there. So it hurts to see that we may see the last of Nico. Because
Adam?
I think Nico's a superb driver, and he really did well in that Racing Point.
Adam?
I think, I'd say, though, it kind of felt like quite a nice waste for Nico to leave, in that he left on kind of a more positive footing, I think, than he had when he was at Renault, and he just kind of seemed tired of it all. You know, he came back, he had 2 good super sub performances, became became the cult hero that, he had been in previous years. And I think if it's the last time we see Alex, I think that would feel like not a massive, but a big waste of potential, because I do think, he deserves to have a chance at another team because of what he did in flashes at Red Bull and for most of his AlphaTauri years. So I think if it is the last time we see Alex, then definitely him. If not, probably K-Mag.
Nigel, do you have one quick one to throw in there, or are you going to agree with everything
The
we've all
F1
said?
world moves on very quickly, doesn't it?
Yes, you don't care.
Nigel isn't sentimental. Doesn't have favourite drivers. He just watches them come and watches them go, like the passing of time itself.
We're running out of time because of the passing of time itself, as Adam mentions. But we've got time to have a few quick
Editing.
Editing. We can't edit anything out though. We're doing well. We're saying
It's
interesting
sports
things.
personality stuff at the start.
Well, we'll edit this bit. So we're going to have a quick moment. Doesn't have to be quick fire, but about our favourite moment of the season and favourite overtake of the season, and then looking ahead to 2021. So we'll start with a favourite overtake, and I'm going to go to Nigel first because he doesn't want to go to first. So I'll go to Adam.
It's easy. Gasly on Perez at Eau Rouge at Spa. It was just such a kind of white knuckle ride. To see the onboard of it, it's just so. It's just such a kind of intense overtake, and it's massive cojones and massive skill and massive trust between the two drivers as well. I think, that for me is the standout, one of the standout overtakes I've seen.
Ed,
I'd agree with that. It shows some big dick energy, as Danny Rick would put it.
Lovely.
Gasly.
Ellie, do you have a different option? Variety's sake.
I want to say, I can't remember who it was on, but George Russell on the safety car at Sakia, the first one he did when the safety car went green. He was on.
Bottas.
I want to say it was on Bottas. Yeah, on Bottas. That was great to watch. Watching him.
Nigel, you've had a long time. That was for
that one for the lead.
It was for an opportunity to fight for the lead.
Fight for the lead, yeah, because Perez was in the lead.
Oh, yeah, kind of going into the wiggly bit. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I did rate that, actually, to be fair.
Yeah, that move.
Nigel, you've had long enough now?
I can't remember that many good overtakes, which sounds like that season. No, joking. I think Verstappen and Bottas in Styria when he went round. When Bottas got him, but then he re-overtook him round the outside on all
That was a very good battle, yeah.
It was nice. He didn't have DRS or anything. I don't know how he got round there, considering the pace difference between them, but he managed to make it stick. So I'll go with that one, Verstappen and Bottas.
Before we go on to favourite moment, I'll throw mine in there, which is Albon round the outside on Cops on Kimi Räikkönen. I thought that was really good because it's round the outside on Cops, which is not what you do in a racing car, but he did it. I thought that was brilliant. Favourite moment of the year?
Again, easy, is Hamilton crossing the line on three wheels in the British Grand Prix. That's going to be something I'll remember for a long, long time, even more than the race itself, as we said in part one.
Mm-hmm.
Lance Stroll's pole.
Fair enough.
I'd say the AlphaTauri celebrations after Monza and the radio call. Although, for a personal note, probably me interviewing Gio. Because got to promote that article.
That's a really good personal point. Yeah.
Me interviewing Lance. That one.
Freddie, which was your favourite F1 driver interview?
Oh, I really enjoyed when I took those quotes out of that email from Daniel Ricciardo that Renault sent me.
We've all been there and done that.
I think from a personal point, at Autosport International in the Karun Chandhok press conference type thing, I did quite like that.
Meeting me as well, you probably quite liked as well.
Chatting to Nicholas Latifi, that would be probably one of my personal notes. Favourite moment of the season for me in terms of actually an on-track occasion was probably actually just getting racing, because it felt like we weren't going to have any this year.
Good.
I know that's an easy cop-out answer, but all of that, everything that's gone on this year has been ridiculous. Everything that's still going on this year, and the fact that we were able to actually get a 17-race season underway was pretty cool, especially with all of the Project Pit Lane, building ventilators and stuff that we shouldn't ignore, because that was Formula One coming together to save the world and to help save the world. As well, we just sat back as a way to save the world. They went forward to actually build medical equipment in a whole new way. I don't want to ruin what Nigel's going to say by having said that one though. So
I was going to say Romain Grosjean climbing out after his accident.
Oh, fantastic! Yes, of course.
The images are still, find extremely shocking. We thought the worst had happened, and for him to get out was not relatively okay. Yes, he's got some injuries. He's had surgery. I think that's my moment of the year.
That's a fantastic point. To close that section, we're going to have one final round robin to round off. We're a few days away from New Year's Eve as we release this episode, not as we record it. But going to have a quick round robin to go hot take for 2021. I'll give you a bit of time to think while I ramble a bit more, and I'll say that Kimi Räikkönen won't retire. Who wants to chime in first with their hot take for 2021?
Championship battle will be three-way next season. It'll be Seb, Max, Lewis.
Oh, that's hot.
My word. I hope you're right.
It is steaming hot.
That's a spicy take. Anyone else got
There
one?
is no way Seb is being in a championship battle next year.
No.
I agree with Adam.
I also personally don't even see Verstappen in it, but
I'm trying to think of a word that's hot enough to describe the hot take that Ed's just given.
Garbage.
If that comes on, that'll be like surface of the sun level hot take.
Manure, maybe?
What?
Garbage manure? Is that the...
We're closing off the 2020 season of Winging It F1 podcast talking about manure. Good.
I'll go for it. George Russell will score points in the Williams.
Oh my goodness me.
Oh my word, that's hot. That's hot than a Scotch bonnet.
Oh wow,
I mean,
that's a good way of
difficult
phrasing
for him.
It is difficult. Especially when they can't develop these cars.
No.
Nigel, you've got the sun on you. We can see it in the video. You have had it in your eyes, so you should be in a very heated mood. So give us your 2021 opinion now. Go.
I don't have anything. I don't think it's going to be great.
I don't think it's going to be great. Brilliant.
I don't think it's going to be a classic.
All right, I'll kick you from the Zoom call if you say anything worse than that. Adam.
I'm kind of with Nigel, to be honest. I can't really see much surprising happening, but I'll go.
Just make it up.
A lot. Well, but then next thing you know, people watch it and then they're like, "Oh, you don't know anything," and then you've said Matsushita's going to win F2, and then you're screwed.
I was about to bring that up.
Alonso will have a nice season. He'll have a good season, and it won't be like his time at McLaren.
Wow, that's the most out there opinion I've ever heard.
Absolutely scolding.
So I think on that rather drab note, we're going to round out the 2020 Formula One season for all of us, round out our first year as a podcast. Thank you ever so much if you've watched any episode, if you've listened to any episode. I'm Freddie Coates, he's Adam Dickinson, he's Nigel Chu, and we've been joined fantastically by Ed Spencer and Ellie Jane. You can see all our Twitters, they'll be on the screen. You can find Ellie and Ed's fantastic work all over the internet. You can find Nigel and Adam's fantastic work on a lot of the internet as well. Thank you.
Your fantastic work, Freddie. Don't forget that.
Mine's just good. So thanks very much, Adam.
So modest.
So yeah, you'll be able to see all of our stuff. We'll be back in 2021 as a podcast. We're going to hopefully be able to do as much as we can in the off season that will keep you entertained. And yeah, have a fantastic new year and all the best for what is hopefully not going to be 2020's successor, but is going to be an absolute worldie. So have a good one, everybody. Thanks for watching. See ya.
Bye.
Ciao, ragazzi.